What? Are you gonna resort to physical violence? A cold smile curved Dustin's lips at the sight of the security guards surrounding him. He'd always been the type who was open to persuasion, not coercion. Perhaps he would have given in to them if they'd talked to him nicely, but if they wanted to opt for physical violence he didn't mind teaching them a lesson or two. Well, so what if I am? Don't think too highly of yourself, you brat. Quentin snarled. He'd always harbored a grudge against Dustin for humiliating him at their first meeting. If not for Natasha keeping him in check, he would have exacted revenge on Dustin ages ago. Now that Natasha wasn't around, it was his chance to get payback. Quentin, don't take things too far. Ruth couldn't stand it anymore. It's up to Dustin whether he wants to sell the shares. If you dare do anything to harm him, I won't let you off the hook. Ruth, this has nothing to do with you. Keep your nose out of this. Quentin didn't back down. Why, you? Ruth was about to say something else when Jessica stopped her. Dustin, a wise man knows how to adapt to the situation. You can't hoard all those shares for yourself, so cough them up when we're asking nicely, Jessica said. Many people have gotten into trouble not because of things they've done but because they possess things that shouldn't belong to them. With your identity and ability, you'll only get yourself into more trouble if you keep these shares. Is that a threat, Mrs. Harmon? Dustin Sid bat an eye. It's a piece of advice. One should know their limits. Do you think you would have achieved what you have if not for my daughter protecting you? Jessica looked at him contemptuously. I won't deny that Ms. Harmon has given me plenty of help, but I didn't rely on anyone to get to where I am now, Dustin said coldly. As for emotional, I think there's something you need to get straight. I provided the formula and was the first to develop it successfully. I don't care about the shares, but that doesn't mean I'll allow you to push me around like this. How dare you? Jessica slammed a hand on the table and shot to her feet. Dustin, I've tried to play nice with you. Don't push me. Who's pushing who? Dustin retorted. When the Hummer family successfully developed and marketed Eternamax, the Harmon family had nothing and no way to compete with them. I was the one who helped you make it past that crisis, yet here you are, burning bridges as soon as you get the chance. Is this how ungrateful the Harmon family or certain family members, at least, is? Why, you, Jessica fumed. She didn't expect a brat who relied on the Harmon family's protection to rebuke her like this. Aunt Jessica, don't waste your breath on this brat. All we need to do is capture him. I have plenty of ways to make him give in. Quentin fanned the flames. Mom, don't do anything rash. If you lay a hand on Dustin, Natasha won't ever forgive you. Ruth warned. Jessica stiffened. Ruth's words made her stop to think for a while. Her relationship with Natasha was already strained. If she were to go ahead with this, Natasha would probably sever ties with her. At this moment, the man who'd been sitting opposite Jessica and the other spoke. Mrs. Harmon, I thought it would be easy for you to retrieve the shares, but it seems I was wrong. And who are you? Dustin gave him a cold look. He'd noticed this man as soon as he'd stepped into the conference room. He supposed this guy was the cause of Jessica's sudden interference. The name's Williams, Brody Williams. I'm from Boulderthorn Guild. My father's the second in command, the man said coolly. Mr. Williams is your father? Dustin raised an eyebrow in surprise. He'd met Oliver Williams earlier. It seemed Brody was his brother. I'm sure you know how powerful the Boulderthorn Guild is. Brody lit a cigarette and took a drag. Then, he waved a hand around and said arrogantly, so, you're left with two options. Either you hand over the shares and take the 50 million or make an enemy out of me. I won't give the shares up unless Ms. Harmon personally asks me to. Dustin said coolly. Excuse me? Brody's expression became frosty. Do you know what you're talking about, you brat? Have you thought about the consequences you'd bear if you make an enemy out of the Boulderthorn Guild? Firstly, you don't represent the Bouldertom Guild. Secondly, so what if I make an enemy out of you? Do you think the Boulderthorn Guild runs the world? Dustin didn't bat an eye. I admire your audacity, brat. It's been a while since someone had the nerve to speak to me like that. Still, you'll have to pay for your arrogance. As for the rest of you. Brody grinned menacingly as he turned to Jessica and the others. If you don't want to make an enemy out of the Boulderthorn Guild, you'd better show me some of your sincerity in forming an alliance. If this brat refuses to give us ownership of his shares, you're the ones who'll have to cough it up. Either way, we're definitely getting our hands on 50% of Immortuncle's shares. Jessica's expression changed at his words, as did the others. Dustin refused to hand over his shares. He'd dragged the rest of them down with him. Boulderthorn Guild was backing them into a corner. I've already said everything there is to say. I'll leave the final decision in your hands. See you around. Brody snorted and stood up.
Hold it.
Dustin said. What? Changed your mind already? Brody sneered. I thought you were a tough cookie, but it seems you're a bigger pushover than you look. Then again, it made sense. How many people in Balerno dared to stand up against the Boulderthorn Guild? At least you haven't lost all sense of rationality. Dustin, we could have avoided all this hassle if you'd just agreed to it earlier. Jessica heaved a sigh of relief. Not even the Harmon family wanted to get on the Boulderthorn Guild's bad side, Quentin scowled. So you were just pretending to be a tough guy. You had to give in to the Boulderthorn Guild in the end anyway, didn't you? Stop acting like you're such a big shot. The way he saw it, Brody only had to threaten Dustin a little to make him pee his pants. Brody Williams from the Boulderthorn Guild, right? Dustin slowly got to his feet. Do you think you own this place, coming and going as you like? Did you bother asking me for permission?
What?
Brody raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean, brat? Do you think you can march in here, act all high and mighty, then leave whenever you want? What made you think you could do that? Dustin gave him the stink eye. Brody snorted and pointed at his face. What? Do you want to start a light or something? Go on, then. I dare you to lay a punch on me, you dash. Before he finished his sentence, he was sent flying by a crisp slap to the face. He spun a few times midair before landing headfirst in a gigantic vase in the corner. It was large enough for his whole body to fit inside. Leaving his feet sticking out of the mouth, Jessica and the others were stunned to see that. Their jaws dropped and silence descended upon the room.